Welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. We took weekend off for some family time and kind of let all the craziness of the NHL free agency happen. And now we're back and ready to break some of this down, I think.
Yeah, had a big golf tournament. Good stuff out there. We came in second place. That
That
was
we
that
did.
was
That
pretty
we
good.
did. That was huge. Not as
Huge, huge
huge as some
putts
of
at the
the
end.
Yes. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Not as huge as some of these signings here we had on most of them kind of coming from the first day of free agency, July 1st here. But even the next couple days after that, there's a couple other big signings that are pretty interesting ones, I would say.
Yeah, there was a couple throughout the next week that trickled in. They've slowed down pretty good over the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. But
Yeah, like July 5th, there was only five signings throughout the day, and two of them even being just guys re-signing with their original teams. And then July 4th, there was only three. And there's only a handful on the third. So, like, yeah, really, it was mostly between the first and second day that we really got a lot of the big signings made so far.
yeah, but do we want to just go alphabetically down through the teams?
Yeah, let's just dive headfirst right in here. Who we
All
starting
right.
off with?
Well, first we got the Ducks. And
They
so
made
the
some. They
Ducks,
made some good. Well, I wouldn't say good moves, but big moves, I would say.
yeah, I think for they some of their deals are a bit rich for a competing team, but I think just to keep some guys around while they're going through the rebuild, I think it's some decent signings.
Yeah, like really, the two notable ones are um, Killorn signing a 4-year deal and then Gouda signing a 3-year deal with the Ducks. I mean, I know you're a big Killorn fan, and it hurts, seeing him leave Tampa. I'm
Yeah.
not a huge fan of this deal. Like, I mean, good for Killorn for going out there and getting the bag that he deserves at this stage in his career. Um, but I don't like that deal for the Ducks at all, really.
I think it's a decent deal for them. I think that he's going to bring some scoring and veteran leadership to a team that deal, like, there's no way the Ducks are contenders in the next 2 years. Like, maybe in three or
No,
four, but in the first 2 years of that deal, it's the cap hit isn't going to matter. So I
no.
think that totally becomes a problem near the end, at which point, you can trade that away and retain for some pretty good assets, or you can just get rid of it to someone else if you really need to. I think
Yeah,
it's good on
yeah.
them. I think 4 years is about the perfect length for something like this. Anymore, like if it was 5 or 6, then I think it would be hampering their future. But I think it'll be good enough for them.
Yeah, my first thought when I saw the Killorn signing was just I'd be shocked if he plays the final fourth year of that deal, just because, like you said, Anaheim's they're really going through a rebuild right now. There's not a winning culture there at all. Like it's very apparent. I mean, they
No.
lost the final 13 games of the regular season. Um, people will say, yeah, they were purposely tanking for Bedard, but again, that team doesn't have someone who's a natural born leader that can, um, really take a hold of that team. And maybe Killorn can kind of fill that role. But yeah, in 3, maybe 4 years when they're kind of coming out of that rebuild, they're really going to want to utilize all their cap space towards building a contender and, paying 6.25 to Killorn when, at that stage he'll be 36, 37 in that range. It might be a
Yeah.
little bit rich. So I'd be kind of shocked if he finishes out that final year of his contract there.
Yeah, I definitely think he probably gets moved in year 4 through maybe even 3 if they
Yeah.
see a drastic turnaround, but
Yeah.
most likely year 4. The Ducks also signed Radko Gudas to a 3-year contract.
Yeah, that one's more manageable because it's 3 years, so it kind of fits right in the window. And that's exactly the type of player that the Ducks need. They need that kind of um, when I say anchor, I don't mean like hindering the team. Like I mean a good stable kind of force on the blue line.
You know
Um,
exactly what you're getting from Radko Gudas.
exactly, and especially after seeing what he did, throughout kind of the tail end of the regular season last year, and then through the playoffs with Florida, you know the kind of guy you're getting. You're just now we know you're not going to get to see that Radko Gudas beast in the playoffs for a while.
Yeah.
But I
Or
mean, he got paid, and the Ducks had a lot of cap space to work with. So if it was the money that mattered most to him, the Ducks were the perfect choice for him because I don't think he'd be getting any more money from any other team.
yeah, I definitely think money's probably his biggest factor at this point because I think he's on his fifth team now. Started with
Yeah,
Tampa to Philly, Washington, Florida, and now the Ducks. So,
yeah,
he's bounced around a lot, but when he's in demand.
yeah, exactly right. So can't blame the guy for going out there and getting what he feels like he's worth.
All right, we got quite a few signings here with Arizona. I don't know how many of them are too newsworthy, but definitely the biggest of them looks to be Jason Zucker signing a 1-year contract with him.
Yeah, that one was odd to me. Like obviously, I think kind of everybody got the sense, back at the deadline last year, they moved Bukestad and Stetcher, but those guys very clearly liked being in Arizona, and they made it very open that they'd be willing to go back. And it's not the first time Arizona's done this where, they move guys at the deadline for assets, and then those players come back in free agency. But the Zucker one was even the Alex Kerfoot one signing a 2-year deal. Both of those were quite big surprises to me.
Yeah, I definitely think I mean, it's almost always surprising when guys sign in Arizona, Like I got to imagine it's a great place to be, but NHL franchise wise, it's surprising that a lot of guys would choose to go there. But I do like
Yeah,
pretty much all the signings they did make.
yeah, and even more so, I think the biggest surprise more than anything is the fact that the Coyotes are putting money towards players who are actually gonna play for them. Like the last,
Yeah.
5 years or so, every year it's constantly, they're getting picks and prospects back to bring in, all these guys that are on LTIR and are never gonna play again, unfortunately. And that's kind of what the Coyotes have mostly been known for in recent years. So to see
Yeah.
them actually take a different approach and go out and bring in guys to help make them better for next year, make them more competitive, and hopefully that's part of a plan to help keep the Coyotes in uh, Arizona long term. So I think that's kind of the path that they're on right now with that.
Yeah, it with some of the young guys they got coming up, the team has some promise for the first time in a long time, honestly. And
Yeah,
hopefully they can get their franchise and their arena situation all figured out because between guys like Logan Cooley, you know, Clayton Keller, they got some real talent coming up.
yeah, they've got the tools and the pieces now. They just need to find a way to actually get these all. I mean, Keller's already locked up, but a guy like Logan Cooley, you got to find a way to make him actually be excited about going to Arizona and want to go there and be a part of that organization. And they got to figure out all those major issues they're currently going through first, I think. And if signing these guys can help create the reasoning behind keeping the Coyotes in Arizona, that's a big step in propelling them forward because they have a good group of prospects coming up in the next couple years.
Yeah, they have the promise. We'll see if they can put it together.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Boston Bruins. He's
Ooh,
busy. Yeah. I
big
I don't
bees.
I don't love it, but they made some good moves, I think.
I'm a fan of the moves they made. Yeah, I think more than anything, like obviously, you can say, they made great signings with JVR, bringing Lucic back, Shattenkirk, um, even bringing in Geeky, like are all great additions. The the biggest problem I have with Boston is I don't feel like they did their due diligence properly leading up to um, even just before the draft, because we previously talked about Taylor Hall being traded, and that was a big part of them wanting to keep Tyler Bertuzzi around because obviously Bertuzzi's younger. He plays more of that Boston style hockey. He brings that physical aspect that they really liked from him, but then they lose him in free agency, and so it's like now you basically lost Hall and Bertuzzi for nothing. When in reality, you could have actually kept Hall around longer term and potentially even maybe moved him next year at the draft or at the deadline or something, and you could have actually maybe gotten something back for him. And so that was kind of a big L on Boston's part, but I guess throughout recent months, I guess they're kind of used to taking big L's, so just add another one to the list there for him.
Yeah, it's wild how different their team is going to look this year to
Yeah.
next year, that entire top six, Bertuzzi, Hall, Krejci, and Bergeron still, we don't know if either of them are coming back to play another year. I got to imagine
Yeah.
if they do, they're playing in Boston, unless, another team just chucks money at them.
Yeah, and even, they lost Dmitry Orlov and Garnet Hathaway, who they, went out and made a big move for them at the deadline. Um, Hathaway's, I think Hathaway's kind of replaced by Lucic, or JVR, whatever
Yeah.
role you want to have him kind of play in there. But losing Orlov does hurt their blue line. But at the end of the day, there was no way they could afford Orlov given what Carolina signed him to, which we'll get to coming up pretty
Yeah,
soon here.
we'll talk about that because that was a big contract.
But in terms of who Boston's brought in, I love it for them. In terms of what they've lost and gave up, I think that, it's been a tough offseason for them all around.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the Buffalo Sabres. A lot
They were
of
kind of quiet.
a lot of smaller deals, nothing too big, but there's a few in here, I suppose. Is that oh, that's Kale Clegg.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really, the
these are
only
really
the only
not
real ones. I
much.
mean, they brought Tyson Jost back. You know, kind of just a depth guy for maybe a fourth line. Maybe he can, if he impresses, maybe squeak up into like a third line role. They bring
Yeah.
in veteran Eric Johnson, which I mean, that's that again, that's just another great veteran guy. That's a great guy to have on the blue line with young guys like Owen Power and Darlene and what's the other guy, Samuelson. Like we've just heard all these great things about what Eric Johnson was able to do. Um, for guys like Kale McCarr and uh, Bowen Byram. So now to have him with Buffalo and I'm huge. I'm a very high on Buffalo. Going into this next season, I think Eric Johnson's just going to do wonders for those young guys back there.
Yeah, I definitely think they're gonna take a step up. I don't think they make it into the playoffs this next year, just because the East is so stacked. But they're only gonna get better, and I think they're gonna turn a corner real soon. When a lot of these young guys start stepping up into their new roles, they're gonna be a force.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right.
What's next? Calgary?
Who's next? Calgary Flames. They
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 did
really
like
didn't have
nothing.
too many either. They almost had less than
No.
Buffalo. Like,
Yeah. Really, more you can talk about is the losses of Calgary rather than who they brought in. Like they really
Yeah.
didn't bring in anyone to, help make the team better, bolster, and they're really committing to the group that they have there and the young guys. But losing guys like Lucic, I mean, we kind of knew Trevor Lewis wasn't coming back the moment Sutter was fired. Michael Stone ended up retiring. He was a great seventh D-man for him who, whenever he seemed to get put in the lineup, he would score. So that's kind of a tough loss for them. But he was hired in like a player development role for them. So he is sticking around with the organization,
Yeah.
just not as a player. And then obviously I don't really know if you can call him a prospect 'cause he's been around for so long and used so poorly, but Matthew Phillips ended up
Signing
going to
with
Washington.
Washington.
So that's
Yeah.
that's a big loss for them as well. So really, more I think it's almost kind of similar to Boston. It's more focusing on the losses that they've suffered rather than the minor improvements they've tried to make, which in Calgary's case is far less than what Boston tried to do.
Yeah, I think for both those teams, it's a lot of signings trying to plug holes, but the holes were just kind of too big, and they're doing what they can to patch it up. But it's looking rough so far for them, for
And
sure.
we're still waiting to see what happens with guys like Backlund, Lindholm, Hannafin. Like we don't know what's going on with that whole saga there. It's been kind of quiet on that end, so I think that's kind of taken up most of the Flames' focus kind of throughout this offseason so far.
Yeah, are all of those guys are they all looking for extensions? Like none of them are free agents now, right?
No, they all have 1 year left on their deals.
Right. So
And
at least
so
they have time to trade them if nothing can be done. But
yeah,
I mean, they don't have a ton of guys with a lot of value left in Calgary. They got a couple, but none with huge values, and those are a lot of those guys. So that would be really tough if they can't keep at least two of those three.
yeah. But and like we talked about earlier, Toffoli was I mean, there was originally the four of them, and Toffoli was obviously one of them, and he was the first domino to fall, being traded to New Jersey, and now it's just kind of waiting on what happens with the other three.
All right. Moving on to Carolina, they did make a ton of moves.
They
A lot
did,
of
like,
lot of
yeah,
big moves.
yeah,
They re-signed and extended both Antti Ranta and Freddie Anderson
yeah.
to
Brian,
1 and 2 years
same
respectively.
goalie tandem there.
Did they both take discounts from last year as well?
Yeah,
Like
but
they're
again, they're both older, and I think it was kind of made clear to them, they've because realistically, they still have a very good chance of winning a cup with Carolina next year or even the year after, or potentially even the year after that. But I think it was kind of clear to them that they needed to take a pay cut to stay
yeah.
because, well, I mean, fuck Orlov. What did he get? 2 years, like 7.25. Like, I mean, it's only for 2 years, but like that's a lot to pay for a guy like Dmitry Orlov.
7.75.
It's even worse, like almost 8 mil for.
Yeah.
I mean, at best, he's a middle pair defense. Like he's not a top two guy, and you're
I
paying him
believe
like he
that's
is. So
pretty close to what Hedman's making right now. I think Hedman's at 7.85.
holy shit, that's nuts. The one I really like for them is actually the Michael Bunting signing. Because what did he get? It was 3 years at just a little bit under 4 mil. I think
At
or no,
4.5 mil.
4.5. That's right. Yeah. And so my thing is, I think Bunting should have been the guy the Ducks went after rather than Killorn, because Bunting fits that core of kind of younger-ish talent that the Ducks have. He can kind of go through them through those rebuilding years, and then he's still going to be in his prime, I would say, when they're starting to compete, and then they can still re-sign him and keep him around. So I think Bunting would have been the perfect fit for the Ducks rather than Killorn, but I think he's going to be a great fit for the Hurricanes because they really need that fire and that edge come playoff time, because we didn't see that from him much when especially in the Eastern Finals when they kind of just got uh, just overworked by the Panthers.
Yeah, when Florida got tough, the
It's the same
Hurricanes
thing
really
with
kind of just got
Carolina.
going.
Every year, it's Carolina. It's just when it gets really tough in those gritty games, those crash and bash. Carolina always seems to fold, no matter what. It happens every year, it seems. So, um,
Yeah.
maybe and that's what they're trying to do with maybe that's why they had to overpay Orlov a bit, is because he can kind of bring that mean and nastiness on the blue line still. While still chipping in offensively and being able to hold it down defensively. Um, that's really kind of the only reason I could see behind giving him that much money. But uh, I love this offseason so far for Carolina.
Yeah, I think it's a great signing, the Bunting one especially, because yeah, like you said, they kind of get soft sometimes in those hard-nosed playoff series. And I think a lot of it is because they have a lot of really old guys, and then they have even more really young guys. Like they don't
Yeah,
have too many guys in that middle 27, 28, 29 range who will get in there and give people the business and push back and shove back. So, they got a couple of guys. I don't they had Martinique for a while there, and Stahl was always, ready to give people the business, but they didn't have
yeah,
too many guys who would get in there with you. So,
yeah, and it
I think he's
almost
going to be a fan favorite there
y-
if he can
yeah,
keep his head in check
and they almost
and
even
not
got
check heads.
scarier. Like it was it was reported like a couple days ago that Tarasenko was actually signing with the Hurricanes. And then, it sounded like everything was confirmed, like it was official, but nothing was being released on it for like a day and a half. And then all of a sudden it comes out that Tarasenko's now got a different agent and they're working on a contract to find a spot with him with some team. So it sounds like Tarasenko to Carolina's like not happening now, or it never even was. So I'm not really sure what happened there, but so it sounds like Tarasenko won't be going to Carolina in the end. Because if he did, man, like that's a really good team they would have for next year.
Yeah, and they didn't lose too many guys in this offseason. Like they were already looking pretty
No,
good after this past year. So with some of these
yeah,
extra signings,
yeah, everything they lost
they're
was
poised to make another
fine.
deep playoff push.
Yeah,
All right, I got one name on here for Chicago, but I
yeah,
guess that's because they made a lot of trades and not signings.
yeah.
They traded
Right.
a seventh round pick next year for Corey Perry. They traded for Taylor Hall. They traded for Nick Foligno.
Yeah.
Those were
So
all good
I mean,
moves.
yeah, they signed Ryan Donato to a 2-year contract. Good for Donato. I really like him as a player. Any Blackhawks fans who are upset we're not really talking about your team, suck it up. You got Bedard, so I don't really got much else to say about Chicago. Like they signed Donato, that's it.
Yeah,
I'm
they
good to move
signed Donato.
on.
They signed veterans to teach Bedard how to do it. That's
Yeah,
really all about it. I'm sure we'll
yeah,
have plenty more to say about their team in the next few years, but
yeah. Oh yeah,
for now, they're just laying the foundation for the rebuild.
yeah,
They have barely even entered it yet.
yeah,
The Avalanche got quite a list of guys right here.
yeah. Fuck, I don't even like where do you begin?
Well, I heard that they signed Miles Wood. I did not hear that it was a 6-year contract.
Yeah, but it was a pretty like cheap one. I think he's only getting like 2.5 or something, which I think is great value for a guy like that. He's probably. I mean, I like him as a player, but he's a fourth line guy, but he's still young. He's kind of got that edge to him. I believe he's pretty decent on the penalty kill, if I'm not mistaken. Which is something that the Avs can really benefit from, especially also bringing in Andrew Cogliano back. So you've kind of got, two solid penalty killers on your fourth line there who can still chip in offensively and and whatnot. So I like that Wood signing though for the Avs.
Yeah, and then I guess their big fish that they got to re-sign Bowen Byram, 2 years.
Yeah, they got him on that 2-year bridge deal there until after that. My best guess is he's probably gone. I would say he's probably got 2 more years, and then by then, if he keeps ascending, the way he has been, the Avs just I don't think are going to be able to afford him.
Yeah, I think it's hard to pay two defensemen, upwards of 8 million if that's what you think Byram's going to get to. Luckily, they got quite a bargain on the Makar deal,
Yeah.
but
The one I like the most, actually, that I'm excited to see how it works, is they signed Jonathan Drouin, Nathan McKinnon's old teammate from the Halifax Mooseheads, and we already know that Gabriel Landeskog is not like I don't think he's going to play at all next year. Maybe come back for the playoffs.
no,
Um,
I think they said he's out for
but it
next
sounds like
year, and
he's totally done. So I think Duran, could be a very intriguing option to try out on that first line with McKinnon and Rantanen and see if because at the end of the day, I mean, he's a third overall pick, like, and him and McKinnon have that chemistry. So, if he can really rejuvenate his career this year with the Avs, like that would be great to see for him because he really kind of had a rough go in Montreal.
oh yeah, and then I think he went into the player assistance program and all that. Like
Yeah,
it's been tough for him. So hopefully he bounces back over in Colorado.
yeah. Hopefully, we'll see. But all in all, I gotta say it's been a great off season so far for the Avs, and just really kind of building up to give it another run.
Yeah, they're looking to be a top contender again this next year.
Yeah,
The Columbus Blue Jackets looks like they signed nobody, which makes sense because they're getting young guys.
they so I wouldn't say nobody because I mean it's not a free agent, but they did agree to on the first day of free agency they did sign Adam Fantilli to his entry level
Right.
deal with them. So it's now Fantilli's you know, he's not going back to Michigan or anything. He's with the Blue Jackets now. He's going to be in the opening night lineup, assuming they don't put him in the AHL. But I think that's great for Columbus that they've already got him excited about going to the organization, being a part of that group there, and ready to get to work. So. Even though they didn't bring in any, big free agents, having Fantilli locked in now with them is huge for them.
Yeah, and they did also trade earlier for Damon Severson, so they did
Yeah,
get a
and
little
and
bit more.
Provorov as well.
And Provorov, yeah, we'll see how
Kind of
he.
forget about him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does outside of
I'm
Philly.
really excited to see what Columbus can do this year.
Yeah, do you think Fantelli's going to start on like when they get to opening night? Do you think he's going like straight to the first line? Like all he's
Well,
got to
that's
do is beat out Boone Jenner, right?
no, but see, so that's the thing, and that's where I'm very interested to see because and it's now official, like because it had to get until a certain point, till they can make it official. But like Mike Babcock is now in his head coach of the Blue Jackets, and I'm interested to see how he handles it because just even if they go back to the start of last year, before the regular season, it was the Kent Johnson show. It was, it was going to be his team of the future. He was going to be the number one center, and now you bring in Fantilli, and so now it's like you've got both of these guys, and so I think it's probably going to take until kind of training camp. You kind of maybe try them both out, assuming your top winger duo is Goudreau and Laine. And then I think you might just have to shift back maybe between, Johnson and Fantilli and see, which one kind of fits in there better. Or even instead, you roll, say, Goudreau, Fantilli, and X on the first line, and then maybe Johnson, Laine, and X on the second line, and maybe try and space it out a bit more, and just kind of maybe have almost like two first lines type of thing.
Yeah,
But
just
yeah,
have
I
the
really have
really
no
solid
idea.
top six.
Yeah, I really have no idea how that's gonna go for them. So I'm excited to see how that all kind of shapes out with a guy like Babcock running the show there.
Yeah, if Fantilli can come in and be the guy that they think he's going to be, or even in 2 or 3 years, man, a line of Fantilli, Line A, and Goudreau would be absolutely nuts.
And to think you can run with that for the next, I mean, at least 6 years, because you've got Goudreau for like at least 6 years probably, as long as you can convince Line A to re-up his deal when it expires in, I think, 2 years from now or something. Um,
Yeah,
but it sounds like Line A kind of likes it there in Columbus, and if they start to get a winning culture there and whatnot, like that could be a very deadly top line for them for the next foreseeable future.
yeah, I definitely think Columbus kind of has a similar reputation to Arizona, except
Yeah.
a bit better. I feel like a lot of people, and maybe it's because we're based out of Calgary here, so we hear it from a lot of Salty Flames fans. But it sounds like a lot of fans had the impression that, why would anyone just willingly go to Columbus? Who the hell wants to go to Columbus? But like, it sounds like every player who's gone there is like, why the hell wouldn't I want to live in Columbus? Like,
Well, and
by all
exactly,
accounts, it
right?
sounds
And
like a great place to live. So, and it sounds like they have a good org. All they need is to put together a good team and start winning, and you've got it all.
well, and I think the biggest thing for a lot of guys, like you've got the guy. I like I don't want to throw up certain players' names because like I don't want people to like be like, oh, you like don't assume it shit. But like there's certain guys, especially like Goudreau, you kind of saw throughout Calgary, like he never like he was the star of the show there for however many years. But he never really wanted to be that guy. He didn't like, being the face of in the media and all this. Like he wanted to just play hockey and enjoy it. And in
Yeah,
Columbus, you can do that because you're not, it's not like a Toronto or a LA or with the Rangers. Like it's not constant media and flashing lights, rah rah type of thing. Like you can just kind of live that nice suburban life, play hockey for a good organization. They've got a terrific fan base there, continues to grow every year. That building, like, especially when we saw them in the playoffs, was incredible. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I just don't, I don't see why people, shit on Columbus because, like, from any guy who's been there, especially Cam Atkinson, he loved it there and he was heartbroken to get traded. Which, you go back 15 years ago or whatever, you would never assume a player would be heartbroken about being traded out of Columbus. And that just
yeah. I
shows what, that guys just, when they settle down there, they love it there.
Yeah, I think pretty much every Canadian NHL team, if you're playing for them, you kind of have to live under that microscope. Like, of course, it's a lot more with, Montreal or Toronto, but really any of the Canadian teams get way more press on the hockey team than, over in Columbus.
Yeah.
So I definitely think, a guy like Goudreau, if he just wants to chill and play hockey and stuff and not be this big figurehead, I think I think getting out of the Canadian markets is unfortunately just kind of the only option to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree.
All right, next we got
What
the
do you got
Dallas
next?
Stars.
I so I've got a big like I've got well two big things that I really like with Dallas and one thing that I really dislike. Um so it happened like it was the morning like the day after we finished recording our last episode and it came out that surprisingly Nashville bought out Matt Duchene, which was
Yeah,
was nuts because like he was finally really kind of come back from that kind of little setbacks he was having and was really solidifying himself to be that first line center again. And then Nashville's like, smell you later. And he signs a 1 year deal with Dallas and what was it, like $3 million? Like
yeah,
it's a
one
great
year, 3 mil.
contract. Like that's a
How much was he
great
making
deal.
before?
He was making 8 per year with Nashville.
Do
And
you
so,
think that
like,
was
obviously,
untradeable? Like, if they wanted to move him that badly,
what?
did they have to buy him out, or do you think they could have traded him to a team like Dallas for a third?
See, so I think the problem was I think they must have tried, and when they realized they couldn't, I think that's when. So I don't know for sure, but my assumption is they tried to trade Duchesne because he had 8 years left at, or sorry, 3 years left at 8 million. But I don't
Yeah.
think they were able to find a team to do that trade with. And then their plan was to buy out Ryan Johansson, who has had 2 years left at 8 mil. And so I think when they weren't able to get a Duchesne trade done, that's when they shifted to, okay, let's trade Johansson with, whatever retained. I think it was 50% retained for 2 years. And then Duchesne unfortunately had to get bought out. But Barry Trotz wanted to reshape the team his way, and he had to find a way to move out both those guys on big contracts. And I think he would have rather had it done the other way. But that just unfortunately wasn't able to happen.
Yeah, it sounds like Trotz really wants to full spring cleaning, move everything out and revamp the team in his image. Obviously not
Yeah.
everything. Yossi and Saros are definitely sticking around, or at least have this far. But he really wants to make it his team, the way he knows how to make winning teams.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then the other one. So, long story short, a couple weeks ago, we sat down and recorded. And we kind of did like a pre-free agency episode. And we kind of did predictions. I lost the audio file, so that's never coming out. But I remember one of the biggest things I talked about is how much I wanted to see Max Domi stay with Dallas. Because
Yeah,
I thought he was just a great fit from the moment he came in at the deadline all the way through the end of the regular season. In the playoffs, I thought he fit perfectly. I thought Max Domi finally found a team he could actually stick with long term. And then, we'll get to him later signing with Toronto. But Dallas ended up losing him. And so I think that's a big loss for the team. But I think they really bounced back with, getting that Duchesne deal done.
yeah, and Duchesne's only there for 1 year, but if they can get him to re-up for longer term, that could end up being a really good signing for them.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And it's a great move for Dallas because even if, they're going through the regular season, regardless of how they're doing, if say Matt Duchesne, is like, hey, I don't want to re-sign here, whatnot, you retain half of that at the deadline for just the remainder of the year. You can get a haul for Duchesne if he's playing well at 1.5 mil. Like you could get a decent haul back for him at the trade deadline still even.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. If you were to trade him for 50% retained, now somebody's getting Matt Duchesne for 1.5 mil. Like, any of these teams like, Tampa or Toronto or, Colorado, they'd probably give you a freaking haul for that.
Yeah, exactly, right.
All right. Who do we got
Um,
next? Wow, that's a big list for Detroit.
yeah, fuck. So how do we want to go through this mess here? Holy shit. Fuck, dude.
I guess I'll just start listing some of them because, geez, Stevie Y has been busy.
I just want to
They
throw
got
out the worst signing of the entire free agency. Just start off with that one right off the bat. I see it right at the top. Like it's just staring at me. It, it's
Justin
it's
Hall.
fucking abysmal. Yeah, that's absolutely abysmal.
Yeah, 3.4
Like
mil for him. That's
like
quite a lot.
that move right there single-handedly makes me question the Yzer plan in Detroit. Honestly, I just can't get
Yeah.
over it. I
He
can't get over it.
I mean, I don't watch Toronto a ton. Obviously, Tampa faced them in the first round the last 2 years. And this past year in particular, every time Hall was on the ice, we feasted on him. Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, what do you expect, right? Like it's it's what you get with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is not incredibly smart defensively, and I don't know if he puts up enough. I mean, 18 points in 80 regular season games last year. That that doesn't seem anything jumping off the page to me to say that he should be making 10.2 mil over the next 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, like honestly, yeah. Even and the more I started to think about the other kind of, I think probably their biggest move, like signing they made, was the JT comp for 5 years. Um, I don't get that signing one bit. Like I really don't get that signing one bit for Detroit.
I think it's a decent signing. I think 5.1 is about what he would get in free agency. I think if it was an extension with a current team he was with, maybe they could get him down to like 4.5 or something.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the money or the term, but it's like last year they went out and gave almost an identical contract to Andrew Kopp. And
Yeah.
in my mind, JT Compher and Andrew Kopp, oof, I'm not gonna try and say those two names back to back. That was tough. They're just very similar players though. And so it's like what and they're both like they're good centermen, but it's like you don't need both of them because they're very similar players in my mind. And yeah, I don't know. Like I mean, he's a good player. Like I think he's gonna do like what he's supposed to do there. But it's just like you've basically got two of the exact same guys now, and so what? Now I either yeah, I don't know. I just find him just it's very odd. But I mean, if it's Steve Yzerman, so like you always kind of want to give him give him the
You want
benefit of the
benefit.
doubt. But
Yeah. But eventually, if we all think Detroit's going to start winning with him, eventually they have to start winning or we're going to question that.
well, exactly right. And it's like, so what now? Do you pretty much almost have to commit to Cop or Comfer as your second line center because you can't go with one as your third line center and one as your fourth because you can't pay a fourth line center that much money unless you're the New York Islanders. So yeah, it's just an odd one to me. But like I guess again like it's Yzerman, so give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm not too sure about what he's got cooking there. I like the Klim Kostin signing though.
Yeah,
I do like that one.
that's a good one.
And even the Shane
Two
Gostisbehere
two
one. I
years
didn't even
for
realize he signed
two.
there.
Yeah, Gostisbehere 1 year for 4.1 and Klim Kostin 2 years for 2 mil AAV.
And good for Kostin because we knew he wasn't going to get that with Edmonton. That was part of the reason why he was traded. And
Yeah.
so it worked out well for him because is able to get the money he felt he was worth. Unfortunately, he's going to a team that he's not going to go into the playoffs like he would with Edmonton. But again, like we talked about for some players, money talks for them, and you got and I guess with Detroit, he's also going to get a bigger role. So at the end of that 2-year deal, he could even cash in for a bigger deal. Whereas with Edmonton, he was kind of stuck in a bottom six role for however long he would have been there. So
Yeah, and one other signing that I do really like for the Red Wings is Daniel Sprong, 1 year, 2 million. He just came off a career year, 46 points in only 66 games with the Kraken for two
actually,
mil.
yeah,
That's pretty low risk. Only one
actually no,
year,
that yeah, that,
two
that is a
mil.
good signing.
Like I 46 points while missing out on what is that? 14 games, 16 games, something like that. That's that's pretty good value. Like
Yeah.
especially if he has a really good year and you ship him off at the deadline, you could get something pretty good back for him.
When I feel like maybe that's what it is, and even the Gostisbehere for 1 year, like because like Detroit's again like is obviously not making the playoffs next year. So come the deadline, like you can get a decent pick or prospect for Sprong when you retain half, even if you don't retain, 2 mil is still very affordable. And then Gostisbehere, you can like we saw last year's deadline, and he was making way more at the time. Still got a third round pick. You give him a big role there and let him cook a bit. You could still even get something back for him. So I think a lot of these signings or at least some of them is kind of short term, kind of seeing what you're kind of knowing what you can get in a year's time out of these guys. Whereas some of them, like you're really committing to them as part of your group moving forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of the shorter deals are just throwing a ton of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, moving on to the Oilers. They didn't make a ton of moves here. There's a couple. That's Lane Peterson. That's not even Cal Peterson. There's really not much here then.
I mean, the biggest one and like the only notable one is bringing in Connor Brown to a terrific deal there, and a guy who, I think even with, you could even get away with, putting him with McDavid sometimes, and he could feast playing with a guy like McDavid, or, even, if you split up McDavid and Draisaitl and roll him on the second line with Draisaitl, you can get terrific value out of him for the price you're paying him. So I think that's a huge signing for the Oilers. Still kind of wondering what's going on because, they Ryan McLeod hasn't signed an extension yet as an RFA, and Evan Bouchard hasn't yet. So kind of waiting to see
Bouchard is the big one.
What's going on there, but I got to assume they got something planned or something in the works of how they're going to make it all work. But that Connor Brown signing is terrific for them.
Yeah, and we almost got a Detroit style list here for the Florida Panthers.
Oh,
a lot of stuff here.
Holy shit!
They signed Kulikov to a 1-year contract. Denisenko.
Ekman Larson signed for 1 year. Oh, they got Evan Rodriguez as well for a 4-year contract. That's a good signing for them, actually.
I did not see that they signed Ekman Larson.
Yeah, I think it was actually one of the first signings to almost happen at the start of free agency.
That's too bad. I was hoping Tampa might be able to scoop him up for a bottom
you
four
talked about that, and I said, you know what, Ekman Larson could be a good fit with Tampa, and he signed a cheap deal, with the Panthers, so he could have easily done that with Tampa as well. And then obviously, I guess we can kind of throw it out there because while we're on the topic of Florida, they ended up trading Anthony Duclair to the Sharks and kind of for, a small return. They did get a good, responsible defensive centerman in Steven Lawrence, but again, kind of very similar to Max Domi. They both, Duclair kind of started with the Rangers, but never played there. And then he kind of found his footing in the NHL with the Coyotes, him and Domi together. And I thought, this was the time now where Duclair with Florida, Domi with Dallas, I thought the two of them were finally going to find their, find a place where they can actually just really stay as long as they want, because the team's always going to want them based on what they bring. But I guess Florida felt his $3 million cap hit was too rich for them. And so,
I can't believe that. That's a great
San Jose.
That's a big bet for San Jose. And again, a guy like that at 1.5, if you want to ship him off at the deadline, that'll be big for San Jose. Just keep collecting these guys with as low money as possible, and then
exactly right
them at the deadline.
And he's going to be, he's going to be playing at top 6 minutes in San Jose, so he's going to be putting up, assuming good numbers. He's another guy where, depending on which way the Sharks are going, like you can even maybe re-sign him long term, be like, hey, be part of our group moving forward. 'Cause he's still a relatively younger player in the league. Or you go, yeah, like if you don't want to be here, that's fine. Like we're gonna trade you at the deadline, and we can get a good haul back for you if we retain half. And yeah, 1.5 is a lot. A lot of teams can make that work.
Yeah. One that we also didn't talk that left out of Florida that we didn't mention, I don't think, in Detroit. Alex Lyon. That's I think that's a decent little signing over in Detroit.
Actually, yeah. Um, I think we kind of knew with Florida, like, obviously the revival of Bobrovsky during the playoffs. Don't know if that'll transition to next season or not, but they're also going to be getting Spencer Knight back as well, who, left the team to join the player assistance program. Hopefully he's doing much better, and I'm excited to see what he can do now back with the Panthers next year. But yeah, there's just no more room for Lyon there. So yeah, that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Up next, we got the LA Kings.
So I'm just looking here. So while we're going, like we're pretty hefty into this. So I'm thinking if we roll out the Kings and then next up is the Wild and the Canadians, and then we'll cut it there, and then we'll do a part 2 of doing
Yeah.
the second half of the teams on this list here.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I was thinking. And well, you know what, we can title it, Ducks, Anaheim to Montreal, and then the other one, Nashville to Winnipeg or Washington or whoever's the last team in the league.
Yeah, exactly. Even actually with another thing with Detroit, actually going back to them because I did totally forgot that Lions signed there. They also signed James Reimer to a 1-year contract, who is a very serviceable goalie. He's not capable of playing a whole bunch of games, but you give him 30 games a season, he'll be just fine.
Yeah.
I just don't know what their goaltending plan is long term because 2021 they drafted Kosa with the 15th overall pick, and then now 2 years later to this year's draft they drafted Trey Augustine, 41st overall in the second round, and then they also drafted another goalie, Rudy Gumond, I think is how you pronounce it, in the 6th round. So like they're really stocking up on goalies, but it's like. But now it just seems like, Koso is supposed to be the guy, and maybe next season it was finally going to be his time to go. But now it's like they've brought in 2, NHL goalies, and they're drafting more, so their goaltending situation's kind of a mess right now there.
Yeah, I
So
think
I'm not sure what they got going on there.
yeah, it really seems like Stevie Y wants to make sure that they have a solid goaltending situation when they really start to become contenders. And I wonder if he's just, grabbing a ton of these guys. A lot of them seem to be younger goalies. Like, they signed Nedeljkovic before Lions, and they got guys like Kosa coming up. So I wonder if he's just trying to find the best duo out of all of those guys. And then, goalies are pretty easy to move at the deadline. There's always
Yeah,
teams that have a goalie go down and they're going to need to pick up a backup or something. And
exactly right.
like Reimer is he's definitely, I think, going to be traded at the deadline this next year. And unless they're like really looking like they're going to make the playoffs, then I think he's going to get traded to a team that needs a 1B type goalie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's most likely what ends up happening with Reimer, assuming there's a team that kind of wants a guy like him and is kind of in need. Probably a team that, their backup goalie went down with an injury, and then they kind of just need to bring in a guy that's serviceable, that can get the job done in a few games, but isn't like their guy long term. I think that's kind of what a James Reimer trade would end up looking like.
Yeah.
Assuming, yeah, that he does get moved at the deadline in down the road.
Yeah. Moving on now to the Kings. They signed Talbot to a 1 year, only $1 billion contract,
Yeah, that
which
one I
is
think was kind of a scramble move once they kind of realized that, you know, that I mean once they made those moves to sign Gavrikov to an extension, it was almost kind of, everybody kind of knew that there's probably no way that they're going to be able to keep Korpisalo. Um, and then obviously Cam Talbot was, you know, kind of the next best guy available to bring in. Um, but again, that's kind of the story of the Kings. Like they're coming out of that rebuild. They're ready to go hard and go ham and start being a force in the Western Conference again. But their goaltending has just been an issue for you know the last while.
yeah, since
And bringing in
Jonathan Quick
Talbot
stopped
only,
being elite, really.
yeah, and bringing in Talbot only just bridges the gap until next year. But then you're right back in the same spot. Like you know, I thought once they got Corpusalo, I thought they were immediately going to lock him up and be like, yeah, we finally got a goalie now. But it's like now
Yeah.
they're just kind of in limbo. It's just, you just keep recycling goalies over and over. And as much like, I like Talbot, like I think he's serviceable. That is not a guy that can win you a cup. And
Yeah,
if I'm wrong,
I
if
think
I'm
he's a
wrong,
good
I'm
1B.
wrong. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, honestly, goalies are so hard to predict. Like, really, any goalie can come out of nowhere and win you a cup. I mean, Aiden
yeah.
Hill,
And he'll just did it. Yeah.
like guys can come out of anywhere, but obviously you have a lot better chance if you have a guy is. So it's it'll be interesting to see if they make some moves for a goaltender partway through the year or something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I got to imagine they got something in the works. And then, and then I guess they've also brought in David Riddick. So, if that's your tandem, like David Riddick, as much as especially we know, like really well, being in the Calgary area, how obsessed Flames fans were with him. Big save Dave. But as soon as he did that kind of like stick toss thing after that win, he's just gone downhill ever since. Like he is not a starting goalie. So it's kind of clear Talbot's their number one, and then Riddick's number two, and that's a tough goaltending tandem to run with, I think.
Yeah, I think it makes it a lot easier to fill out the rest of your team because you're paying both your goalies combined less than 2 mil, but it
Yeah,
it doesn't bode well, especially if Talbot goes down with an injury. What are you just gonna you gonna play Riddick most of the games, then bring up somebody else?
well, yeah, and exactly right. Like they've got to get that figured out sooner rather than later. And then really the only other one I think is worth mentioning is Trevor Lewis going back on a 1 year deal to the Kings, going back to where he won his cups there. Just a good veteran guy, can kind of, I want to say help teach, kind of their younger guys, but they traded away a lot of them. So,
Yeah, I
maybe just
was
an extra
surprised at
13th
some of that.
forward, kind of slots in a fourth line center role, maybe here and there, but like it's nothing crazy for the Kings. Their big move was getting Dubois, like we talked about before.
Yeah. All right, moving from the Kings, now we got the Minnesota Wild.
I don't
Unless
think
you
they
know
did like
something I don't.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, they
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 just lost
signed
a lot
one
of
guy to a
guys.
2-year contract. Is this Letary?
Yeah,
Vinny Letary? Two two-way deal. Like that's about it. Do you
yeah.
know what their situation with Philip Gustafson is? Is he an RFA?
Um, so he doesn't have yeah. He's just currently like they've qualified him, so they still own his rights. But yeah, nothing's been uh nothing's been signed by him. They're still trying to work out something with him. Um, they lost like a lot of guys this offseason. Like then they really haven't done anything to fill those holes or anything. So I'm guessing my assumption is, again, they're kind of gonna let those young guys come up very similar to the Flames and try and run with, building through their system rather than just going out and grabbing, um, like free agents here and there type of thing.
Yeah. All right, and the last one for part one of us going through all
Oh,
the
hold the
teams.
phone. Hold the phone.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Oh,
So
hit
we're
me with it.
going back to the LA Kings. They just signed Anze Kopitar to a 2-year extension with an
Nice.
AAV of $7 million with a full no movement clause.
That's a good deal for them.
That's
I think that's a good deal on both
that's
sides.
actually that's a huge win for the Kings there. I literally just saw it pop up and I was like, oh, I guess that's pretty noticeable after we're kind of talking
We were
about
just talking
them.
about them. Yeah,
Um,
that's really good for them. It doesn't lock them in for too long, and even for the next 2 years while he is here, that's the 7 million is very manageable for a guy that will in probably the final year of that deal maybe hand over the reins to uh maybe Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm sure a lot of Kings fans would hope that it would be Quinton Byfield, but I guess
he's got to
we'll
pass
see.
the crown to someone. Um, yeah. So going back to Minnesota, I just saw the Kopitar one because I just opened up Cap Friendly and it just popped up that that had been just recent. So the
Yeah,
problem with Minnesota is now at at this year going into July 1st, the year kind of kicking over in terms of the NHL schedule. They've now got just a little bit under $15 million in cap is tied up for this year and the following year into that Ryan Suter, Zach Parise buyouts. So
yeah,
when the cap is it went up like a mil, so it's like 83 or something, 83 and a half, somewhere in that area. You know, like your $15 million is going to guys who aren't even on your team anymore. And that's for this year and next year. So I think we're going to kind of see a thing here with Minnesota where it's, they were in the playoffs. They always go first round, but I think we're going to see them take a step back for 2 years because when you're $15 million behind the cap compared to every other team, well, not every other team, but 15 is a lot. Like that really
a lot of it.
hinders what you can put out for an on ice product for your team. And so you're really going to have to rely heavily on your core guys that you have there, and then your young guys coming up through the system and like trying to make it work with them. Like that's really all they can do.
Yeah, they have quite a surprisingly good crop of young guys coming up. And with guys, like Kaprizov, they got Eriksson Ek, Matt Boldy. I think if they just kind of need to have some of those guys hold down the fort for those 2 years, get that cap space back. The cap's gonna have most likely gone up a decent bit by that point as well. So then
Yeah,
they're going to be able to make some big moves.
you're going to see them
Uh,
make like some big splashes in free agency in 2 years, I bet, because they
yeah,
are going
I
to have
think
just a abundance of cap that they can start using.
yeah, I think once they get through these next 2 years, which might be a bit rough, I think they're going to be in a real good position.
Yeah,
And
I
last
completely
here,
agree.
we got the Montreal Canadiens.
Really haven't done much.
No,
Um,
they got a decent little 2 year contract on Harvey Pinard.
Which, yeah,
Uh,
he was a great player for them when they brought him up last year. I like that move for them. And then even we were talking about it just before we hopped on here. They got David Reinbacher signed to his entry level deal.
yeah,
Um,
he'll be good when he joins the club with them.
and I mean, hopefully the fans get their shit together and um actually appreciate this, great prospect that they have, and stop hating on him for, again, like it's and the part that really sucked is, so he receives all that hate after being drafted from Montreal fans, like all this hate. And there's a video of him signing his entry level contract. He was like crying tears of joy because he was so happy to be in this moment, make it this far, and actually signing that deal. Like, I just
And
don't see how
also
you
a team
couldn't
with the
want a guy
pedigree
like
of
that.
the yeah, and like he's so happy because like to be signing with a team with the pedigree of the Montreal Canadiens, especially as they're going through a rebuild when you're signing your ELC, that's the dream as an NHL player. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of
yeah,
get to, just like not even going way back, but just, in recent memory of him kind of growing up, um, trying to follow in the footsteps of like PK Subban, Shea Weber there. Like, yeah, like Montreal is, except for the last, couple years since Shea Weber, has kind of been done with hockey. Though that's like kind of there's a big role there, and it's been waiting to be filled. And for him to, fifth overall, you've got that opportunity. I mean, and any hockey kid growing up watched and knew what PK Subban and Shea Weber could do. And so to go to a team like Montreal and be like, man, I could, like, if I really give him all, I could be the next Subban or Weber there and whatnot. Like, that's gotta be such a great feeling for him. And it just sucks that there's always that dark spot of the fans, upset with him for something that was out of his control. But it's so great to see him just tough it out and be like, no, I'm committed here, and he wants to give it his all. So I think that's
yeah,
such a
I'm gonna
great
make the
moment for
fans love
him.
me. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
exactly, right?
we know that, obviously I got to imagine 95% upwards of Montreal Canadiens fans are fine with the pick or happy with the pick, or at the very least weren't sending those threats.
Yeah,
That's got to be an incredibly
exactly.
small minority, just a very vocal one. But
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully he does really good there, and who knows, maybe if Tampa, gets Drouin back, maybe we can trade 1-for-1 for Reinbacker as well.
Yeah, you know what? Tampa's got a way of fleecing Montreal in some deals, so it's not out of the question. It's not out of the question. Um, yeah, so
Any
that
of
kind of
these other
wraps up.
names from the Canadians jumping out at you?
No, not really.
They did
No.
sign Alex Newhook, didn't they? Or
No,
no,
so
they
they
traded.
got his, yeah, they traded for his rights because he's an
Is he a
RFA, but like they still
RFA?
haven't
Yes.
actually signed him to anything. We're still kind of waiting to see what that looks like for them. But like overall, I mean, if I think if the Canadians could go back like 2 weeks and examine, looking at now what they know they could have had, they could have played this offseason so differently. Because obviously, so what they traded, like what, the 31st and the 34th overall pick or something like that, or the 31st and like 36 or something, for New Hook.
Yeah.
So say you take trade back, and then at the time before they even made their pick, they were offered, from what it sounds like, from Nashville. The rumored package was Askarov, the 15th overall pick, I think is what they had, and then like the 24th. And so it's like now you've pretty much got Newhook and Reinbacker, but like you could have had Askarov, and then you could have gotten a great player at 15, a great player at 24, a great player at 31, and then a great player at whatever the other one was, 36, 37, 38. Like,
Yeah.
so now there's a lot of pressure, I feel like, that's unnecessarily being put on like Newhook and Reinbacker based on like, the Canadians went after these guys when they could have had an abundance of great prospects coming up. So a lot of pressure is kind of on these two guys. So it'll kind of be interesting to see how it, like, kind of looking back 5 years, when we're 5 years in the future, looking back now and seeing like,
Yeah.
man, how did these moves work out for Montreal? Um, but I mean, getting Reinbacker locked in already. Don't know where he's gonna play, but The future's slowly looking more and more bright for Montreal.
Yeah, I think
After
it's starting to look real good for him.
yeah,
Yeah, especially that new hook deal. I think that's actually going to pay off really big for them. I think he's not only does he look like he's young and he's really good, but I think he fits their timeline perfectly.
yeah.
He's young just like the rest of their core. He's gonna be a really good piece for them going forward if they can lock him up to a long-term deal sooner rather than later.
Well, and even it's like last year we saw, they made that big move at the draft. You know, trading Romanov to the Islanders, getting that first back, then flipping that first for Kirby Dach. That changes scenery for Kirby Dach and getting that elevated role that he just wasn't able to get with Chicago. Very similar to Newhook with Colorado, just wasn't able to get that elevated role and play where he belongs. We saw Kirby Dach thrive with Montreal, being able to play in the role he's meant to play in. And so if they can do that with Newhook, like that can work out very well for them if they play it right.
Yeah,
They just got to handle him right there and give him the opportunity to thrive where he's meant to thrive.
yeah, you gotta play the player in the spot and in the role that suits their play style. And if he wasn't
Exactly.
getting it in Chicago, well, Montreal's going to get a great player for him then.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
But that's gonna wrap up our part one of the free agency breakdown so far. We're
Yep.
just a little under a week out from free agency day, and hopefully we get some more breaking news while we're recording part two.
Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens here. Got
Yeah, I'm
anything
sure it'll all be
you want to
breaking
add at
news
the
for
end
teams
here?
we talked about in the first part.
Yeah.
Uh,
Anything you want to add here at the end?
Not really. I guess just listen to the next part if your team comes after Montreal in the alphabet.
Yeah, there we go. Boom. Works for me.